Let's start streaming. All right. Hello, photographers. We are here. We are live. Scott's here. Scott says first.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It has been forever. And holy crap, Beth is here. Hold the phone. We're going to see some crap slinging from Beth.
Beth's been away longer than we have been, I think.
Yeah, it's been a while since she's been here to give us some crap. So I think Beth, you better lay it on pretty thick for us tonight, because we're gonna need it, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So hello to everybody who's joining, and this is Studio Blab. I guess we're calling it Studio Blab. That's sort of the official, unofficial title of this little thing we're doing. Hey, Sandy, how's it going?
Hey, Sandy's here too. Hey.
Yeah, and we might as well start like we normally start with our week in photography. So, as usual, we want to know what you guys have been up to, and it's been a few weeks. So, if you've got a lot of stuff going on, let us know what's been happening in the chat. Hello, TC is here as well. And Mark, you want to start? Let us know what you've been up to these last few weeks.
Yeah, well, I've actually not been up to a whole. Well, I've been out and doing a little bit of shooting here and there just because the weather's actually starting to get nice. But I guess sort of the biggest thing I've done photography related is I put a new video onto the old YouTubes there.
Yeah, you gonna drop that link in the chat for everybody?
Yeah, that's what I was just looking for, and YouTube didn't load up properly for me.
Yeah, but we're starting on you already. I mean, why would we wait? We're just going to lay it on right away.
Yep.
Hello to Emmanuel. How are you doing, bud? Good to see you here with us. Mark's grabbing his link. My vocals aren't very loud. Crap. All right, let me make an adjustment here. Mark, you might need to adjust your vocals down.
Mark, I was talking to me, and I thought today I would share.
Just a moment. I'm just making a volume adjustment here. Check, check. Let me transition that over. Okay, that should hopefully make my vocals stand out a little bit. Ooh, Candy, you did make it. That's awesome. Good to have you here. So that's Mark's video in the chat there. If you haven't checked out his video, save that link and watch it after the Blab, since we're here right now and you guys need to stay with us. Hello to, P-Tax Howl. Hey, welcome. And hello, Judy. So what else have you been up to besides making the video, Mark?
Like I said, not much. Just mostly been busy at work. We've been just absolutely swamped, and like I said, a little bit of stuff out shooting here and about, but nothing spectacular. Anything that I've taken, I've actually posted in the group, so pretty much anybody who's part of the group has seen it. So. I'm thinking of purchasing one of those little big stoppers because I have a set of ND filters, but the ND filter I have, which is an ND8, only basically gives me about 3 stops.
Okay.
But I went out with the intentions of doing some long exposure photography, but unfortunately. Didn't work out all that good just because it was only an ND8 versus like the big stopper is like don't know what the ND rating is, but it's the equivalent of 10 stops. So
right.
I'm thinking I want to pick up one of those now so I can actually do some serious long exposure stuff during the day.
Nice. That's really cool. So I've had a lot of stuff going on. TC says, Mark is still very loud and you could still use more volume. All right. Let me make another adjustment. Mark, do you remember how you turned your volume down last time?
No, but I'll just move my mic further away. How about that?
That would help, because I'm going to have to boost me up more, which boosts you automatically. So hopefully, let me bring it up.
Hopefully that's better. I can hear you pretty good now.
Okay, check. Let me bring it up a little more.
Check, 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 check.
Check. Ooh, that's way too much, I think. Check. Hello, photographers. Okay, I think this should work out okay for volume. So let us know if that sound is better. we've had a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff going on. Again, if you're just joining, hey, Jim is here as well. Welcome, Jim. Good to have you here. If you've got something you want to share in the chat, let us know what you've been up to, photographically or otherwise. I've had a lot of crap going on. So first is that I have finished recording and editing all of the videos for the Lightroom course, for the post-processing course that I've been working on. Now, it's not available yet because I still got to put it up on the internet, and we got to do all the stuff to get ready to actually be able to sell it. But we are closer to that goal. And so tonight, I'm actually going to be talking with my partner, and we'll probably be figuring out when our target launch date is. So next week, or probably even Friday, I'll have some information on when we're planning to go with this. Son of a gun. I really checking sound. Yeah, I'm coming in. Why am I coming in so low? Let me just mess with this a little bit, folks. I apologize. System sound. I didn't change any of the sound. Change audio, system audio capture. We're just going to have to go with that because I don't want to mess with it.
I think Sandy's right. It did sound better when you took it out of your pocket.
Took it out of my pocket. All right.
Yeah. Maybe it's actually using the phone mic instead of your wireless. Maybe that's the problem.
Stupid thing. All right, hold on a second. Okay.
There you are.
Check sound check. That's way better. I gotta bring that down now because that's really hot. Okay.
That's why you need a hardwired mic.
Yeah, well, this is a wired mic, but it's into this. It was probably muted because it was actually the phone mic rather than the headphones. And the reason we got to use this setup is because of the Hangout. I don't there's probably a way for me to separate my sound from Mark's sound, but as of right now, I haven't quite figured that out. So I'll tackle it at some other point, which would allow me to use either this boom mic or my regular clip-on mic. But anyway, back to the news. Back to the news.
Better now anyway.
Good. Okay, so the Valkyrie is here. Well, Terry, awesome. Terry's here. That's cool. And let's see. So news. I gotta get. So the Lightroom course is done. We got to get through this so we can get to the questions. We don't waste all night on this. Lightroom course is on the way to being done. It's coming soon. So if you're interested in that, keep your ears peeled for announcements. Number two, my wife and I bought a house, a new, different house, which is going to have a bigger studio space for me, longer, taller, and wider, which I'm super excited about. And I'll be able to put my video recording studio in a bigger space, which will make it easier for me to frame the shot in a way that I want. The blue room with the two posters behind me, I'm happy with that setup, but I've always wanted to do something a little bit different with it because it's not exactly the way I want it. So that will be coming once we get through the financing and close on this house and fix it up and all this other stuff. And then I also bought a new camera. I'm trading in my old EOS M cameras that I've been using for recording my videos. And I purchased a Panasonic G7, which I'll be using for recording my videos, which will up my video quality, which is something I've been wanting to do for a while. So I'm really excited about all these things. And that's mainly what I've been working on. I haven't been editing any photos, so I'm super behind on my photo editing, but I will be live editing on Friday. So if you want to join me for that, that is going to be happening. We're going to get back into the swing of things, and I'm basically getting back on the horse, so to speak, and going to be finally back into the routine. Live studio blabs, live edits, Tuesday videos, the whole works. It's all coming. So I'm super excited about that. Hey, Tim's here too. This is super awesome. Okay, so let's talk some more about these lights, because these continue to vex people, and we want to help with that. So one of the things that I want to address immediately, one of the very first things is addressing two things. One is how to learn this stuff, like how to learn to use this. And Mark, I definitely want to know what your approach has been to learning it, but my approach and my recommendation is that you get your flash or flashes, however many you're going to work with. But I almost always recommend that people start with just one flash. And then, you know, and when I say a flash, I don't just mean the flash on your camera. I actually mean the flash with the stand and an umbrella as a minimum setup, basically, and a set of triggers of some sort so that you can fire these things remotely. And then the best way to learn how to use this well is to practice your ass off with it, which, you know, sounds stupid of me to say, right? Practice makes perfect. It's the thing that your coach tells you on your basketball or whatever team, but there's just no other substitute for using it and understanding what happens when you do different things. And the way I recommend you practice is through self-portraits. Now, many of you might be thinking right now, oh my God, self-portraits. I take pictures because I want to be behind the camera. I don't want to be in front of the camera.
That's me.
Yeah, that's fine. You don't have to share these pictures with anybody. But if you dedicate yourself to regularly using your flash and lighting equipment and experimenting and taking self-portraits, you will learn from that process. That was how I learned the majority of my lighting skills. Now, they've built on that as I've continued to grow and learn and shoot and try new and different things. But I spent a year taking self-portraits. I did it every single day. I did it right here in this space, in the studio. It didn't look like this. It was literally just a garage at the time. But I spent a year, every day I came in here with my lights, and I took a different kind of self-portrait, playing with the lighting, playing with the settings, and messing around with it to learn what happens when I do different things. And through that experience of taking those self-portraits, I really started to understand how to use this tool to make my pictures look the way I want them to look. So if you don't want to take self-portraits, then find someone or something that you can regularly take portraits of. It can be still life stuff too. The main point or the goal is that you just have to practice regularly. There's no other substitute. Watching these studio blabs that we do, like, that's great because we're going to give you useful information, but that information is no good if you don't put it into practice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How do you approach learning, Mark?
Well, that's pretty much the same thing as if it's something that new that I want to learn, whether it's Flash or whatever the case is. I'll do some research, whether it be YouTube videos or whatever the case is, to get a feel for how to approach it, and I kind of build off of how I would like to approach it, and to get out there and shoot and like, I actually just posted this on Facebook and in a new group there just today, actually, or yesterday. That basically sitting in front of the computer watching all of the YouTube videos in the world is great and everything, but if you don't get out there and actually practice the techniques that you're learning, you'll never retain it.
Yeah. Gather the information you need, but then put it into practice. Like, really, the best way to sum it up is what my stupid shirt says, right? This is why, that's why I say it at the end of every one of my stupid videos, because you can watch all of my videos and you can gain a whole bunch of knowledge from them. But if you don't use that knowledge, if you don't shoot and shoot and shoot, it won't do you any damn good.
Yeah.
So
it's like anything. You don't actually do it, you won't retain it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and when it comes to flash photography, I hear a lot of people go out, they buy like 2 or 3 flashes and try to get everything all to work together, and that's not the approach that should be taken with something like that. As you said, start with one flash, learn it, and build off of it.
Yeah, and here is the reason. Delta Dave, thank you very, very much for that super chat. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. And Delta, Dave, if you have a question of any kind, and if anybody has a question, feel free to drop that into the chat. Super chat questions we will answer immediately. And everybody else's questions, of course, we're going to try to get to as quickly as we can. We sometimes do miss them. But again, Delta, Dave, thank you so much. That your support means a lot to us. But back to what we were saying. The reason you want to start with one flash is if you're using multiple lights when you're taking photos, you can change something and you won't know if what you're changing is making any difference, right? So let's actually, back this up with a demonstration, right? I'm going to set this light up. I'm going to set up like 3 lights here right away. You know what? I got to say something here real quick. I've got this video. Yeah, Beth, the shirt comes in blue. Totally. Oh, and hello to Christian. And TC says, practice my ass off. Easier said than done, but I know I should. That's the truth of it. You got to practice as much as is possible. Now, I said earlier, I just want to address this super fast. I said earlier that I did that self-portrait a day. I took a photo of myself every day. That was a huge project, and I kept to it, and I did it. But I'm not, when I say you need to practice, I'm not saying you should do what I did and take a self-portrait every day. You have to figure out the frequency that is workable for you and the life that you live and the responsibilities and obligations and other things that you have. So for you, it might be once every other day. It might be once a week. It might be once a month. But you need to do it as often as you possibly can. That's the key.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
I've talked about this flash.
Because everybody's busy and has stuff on the go, but...
Yeah. So TC Connor, this super chat is something that Google just added. If you look at the bottom of the chat window, you'll see there's a $sign. And with that $sign, you can basically support what we do to make these videos by kicking us a little bit of money. And when you do that, if you also make a comment, then your comment gets pinned to the top of the chat for everybody to see. So with some people, they do like what I said. Some people who do videos say, I'll answer questions that come up in the super chats, but they might not answer regular questions. We try to answer everybody's questions, of course. We're not going to ignore you just because you don't put money our way. But if somebody has a question and they put in the super chat, we will answer that as quickly as possible because they're expressing a desire for that question. But that's what the super chat is, TC. So I want to address this stupid little flash here real quick. The Yagnuo YN660, man, I really like this flash. Mark, I want to know if you're having this problem. This stupid little rubber gasket on the bottom here keeps falling off of my flash, which is really annoying because that means it won't stay on my hot shoe very well. And it's kind of ticking me off to the point where I'm debating either A, gluing it on, or B, retiring this flash and buying something different because this really annoys me.
I'm not even sure what rubber gasket you're talking about.
It's on the very bottom of the flash, around the flash foot, and it's designed to put pressure around the the compression of the foot when you put it on the stand so that it doesn't fall off of the stand. So I'm switching to a different flash here. I like this old screw mount better on the YN664. Oh, and I put it on backwards.
I'm going to open mine and have a look now.
Yeah.
I don't recall seeing that.
So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up a few lights, and I'm going to set them up all willy-nilly, right? I'm just going to turn them on, and I'm going to point them at my subject. So like this one, let's say I'm just setting up some lights, and I do this like, oh, I'm going to put this light over here, right? And then I'm going to grab another one. See, the Valkyrie says, I suppose I could use the bobblehead 10 to 20 millimeter lens, but the umbrellas and stands still take up space, and I don't have much indoors. Yeah, I mean, if you only have a wide angle lens, that makes it a little difficult because you got to keep, if you want your lights out of the shot, then you got to keep them out of the shot. But even so, any practice you can do with your flash is going to be worthwhile practice. So even if you're taking photos and your flashes are in the shot, that can still be worthwhile because you'll still see what they do to your subject and how it makes your subject look. But let's pretend we've got something that we're trying to accomplish with a photo, right? Like, let's say, I'm just going to do something here real quick. Okay, so I got bear with me for a moment as I finagle things around here a little bit. Yeah, you could bounce off the walls. The 560s, Christian, they don't have that grommet on the bottom, which is part of the reason I'm debating going back to that over something else. So I'm just going to go to my Flickr account. I think I'm logged into Flickr. I hope I'm logged into Flickr. Ah, good, I am. You camera roll.
I see what you mean about that gasket, but I've never had mine come off. I never even realized it could until I actually pulled it and it came off.
Yeah. So let's just say, for instance, stupid Flickr is being annoying. You guys get to watch me here. I'm grabbing this picture of Christine right here as a reference point, right? So let's say I wanted to make this. How do I make this fit the window? This picture happen, right? And I think, okay, I need to set some lights up to take a picture of the subject. And we're going to actually, you know what? I'm not even going to do this one because this one has gels and colors, and we're going to go with something more basic, right? We'll do this one right here. Okay. So let's say you want to take a picture like this. This is a pretty straightforward picture in terms of what it looks like in the lighting. Let's see here. The Valkyrie don't. Oh, walls are mostly dark, but there's or a whiteboard. Okay, I'm just catching up on the chat, guys. Okay. So we want to make a clean white background. Well, first of all, the one thing we do know is we actually need a white background. So let me get that sorted out. Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't planned out very well.
No, this backdrop won't work very well for a clean white. And again, just to reiterate, if anybody has questions, you're welcome to drop those in the chat. We're always happy to answer. Doesn't have to be flash related. Photography in general is fine. Just pull up all this gaffer tape so I can roll up my backdrop. I go through so much gaffer tape.
Yeah. Luckily, it's cheap.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, so we're rolling this up. That's good enough. Let's bring the white down.
I suppose technically you didn't need to roll the black up because the white could have gone right in front of it.
Yeah, I could have, but... All right, so this will be good enough. It doesn't need to be all the way out, but we'll just set it up like this. And now she can't sit down. Hey, RJ, how's it going, bud? Yeah, it is. It is good that Mark hasn't been destroyed by his Speedotron pack. Okay, so I've got light number 1 on. Let's say I want to try to replicate this look. So I just go, okay, I'm just gonna put some lights up and try to take a picture of it. This, in my opinion, is the wrong way to go, because when you have a bunch of lights set up all at once and you don't know what you're doing, you're not gonna know what light is doing what to your photo. Okay?
Yeah.
So, ooh, that's totally freaking out on me.
Psychedelic.
Yeah, it was on, and the hot shoe was triggering it. All right, so we got this on. Let's just boom. We turn this on over here, and let's say I don't really know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to set some settings and just like try to take a picture. And I do that. Turn on the camera. Do that. Turn this on. Okay, now my camera settings are 1/250th of a second, f7.1, and ISO 200. And I'm just going to come in here and take this picture and pound a bunch of light in there. And I got to switch it so you guys can actually see it. So give me just a moment here to do that. Right, and it looks like that. And that's not a bad that's not a bad photo. Like, I literally just turned on the lights and pointed them at her. I didn't change anything. But if we go back to the photo we're using as a reference, it's different. Okay, look at this image here. How do I make it stay there? Flickr is annoying. Compared to that, right? Like, look at these shadows over here and look at the light over here. This has more even light on it. So now if I'm looking at this and I don't really know what I'm doing, I might think, I might not know what to change because I've got these two lights on, okay? And if we think about the situation, it should become fairly obvious that this light here needs to be changed or adjusted, or maybe didn't even fire in that photo because this side of her face isn't catching much light, even though this side is. Right, so I'm going to take another shot and see what it looks like. I'm not going to change anything. I just want to make sure that that light over there was actually firing. Okay, so it must be firing. No, it's not going off. That's why. See, and that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. My wife says, so did you order the new camera yet? We buy a house and he decides it's time for new cameras. I did order the camera, yes. I did order the camera. Okay, so here's what we just discovered. Having the two lights set up, this one wasn't firing, but I didn't know that initially, even though I thought it was firing, right? So I'm looking at this photo and I'm thinking, well, what's wrong? And I may or may not know what's happening with the light. But if I have just one light on and I take a photo, I know that the change, the only thing that's happening, there it went off finally, is coming from the one light that I might be using, okay? I know that's a little scattered. I kind of jumped right into that. Does that make sense to you guys? It's about, if you start with one light, then you'll understand what's happening because the only light you have is putting all of the light that you're using into the scene. And any changes you make will be coming from that light that you are using. If you have multiple lights, you might make a change and not understand which light is actually changing things, and you might go off in a direction that you don't actually want to go off in. Yeah. The on feature on those triggers is great. You are correct about that, RJ. The on feature is a very helpful feature. It was actually
novel idea.
Yeah. To be fair to myself, it was actually on, but for some reason it was switched into transmit mode and not receive mode. So that's why it wasn't going off. Okay, so let's actually get into the questions that we have lined up for this. And if anybody else has questions, again, go ahead and drop those into chat. So one of the things that, excuse me, Peter has had trouble with, and a number of other people had problems with, is inconsistent flash release. Now, this comes down to a few things, and it varies because there's inconsistency. You're going to blow out the backdrop? Hey, Dave, how's it going, bud? So TC says, I need help with the initial setting up, i.e. the camera settings, the speedlight settings, etc. Okay, so to address that, which kind of comes in line with what we're talking about here, is we'd have to walk through a particular process. So why don't we do that? Mark, why don't you grab a photo that we're going to recreate, and then using that as a reference point, so go ahead and send it to me through Messenger, Mark, and then I can bring it up on the screen so everybody can see it.
Any photo in particular?
Anything, some sort of a headshot-ish type photo, since our basic subject is a mannequin. And while you're grabbing that photo,
you want like one of mine?
One of yours is fine. Anything, whatever you want to grab is good.
Okay, let me see who I can find.
Because TC, when it comes to the initial setup, it's a step-by-step process. You know, now that I think about this, I should make a checklist. I should make a checklist for this. I'm going to make a checklist for this. I'm going to make a checklist for you guys to use for setting up your shots with flash.
$10 a pop.
Yeah. No, not $10 a pop. RJ, and RJ's right. You got to take the piss out of me. I welcome it. My wife says I can't say too much because I'm buying a new bed frame and chair, but it's off Craigslist, so it definitely is much cheaper. Hey, Mark, how's it going? Welcome. Okay, so here we go. My world, I'll get to the settings. The demonstration I did earlier was literally just turning these on and pointing them at the subject to kind of get the point across that if you're using multiple lights, you're not going to really know what's going on. But in terms of inconsistency with your flashes, there's two types of inconsistency. The first type is inconsistent flash output, meaning when you take a photo with the flash and then you take a second photo with the flash, the first photo and the second photo have different flash exposures or different amounts of light coming from the flash. And that's going to be one of two things. The first thing it will be is you using your flash in TTL mode, which is what the camera, it's basically auto mode for flash. And auto mode for flash, or TTL flash, reevaluates the exposure every single photo you take, which will lead to inconsistent output because every single photo you take, the camera may tell the flash to use a different level of power. And that's a bad thing if you want a consistent look in every single photo when you're shooting with flash. So if you shoot flash and you use it in TTL, inconsistent output is part of the game. So if you don't want that, you need to switch to manual flash. And that's what Christian said, manual. You need, I mean, he was responding in my world, who was asking about what I'm using, but manual flash will give you consistent output from your flash because you set the power and it doesn't change until you change it. Mark, you want to talk about flashes and triggers and the vagaries of using wireless things?
Sure. Yeah. So
well, I get that photo up.
Yeah, with triggers, it can basically be, if it's a cheap trigger, you can end up with issues just because they're cheap. Other thing that might cause inconsistent flash release with wireless triggers is if the batteries are getting low. If you're finding it's working and then over time it's not working as much, then that's probably what the case is. This also could be whether it's a radio trigger or not a radio trigger. If you have like an obstacle between you and the receiver, something blocking the signal, then that could give you inconsistent trigger releases as well. And also sometimes even just where your receiver is, like when I was actually just doing my last video, I was having issues after I did the video, trying to get a test shot to put into the video. Sometimes the flash would go and sometimes it wouldn't, and it was because the receiver I basically had it sitting right on the power pack, and it was either the metal case was absorbing some of the signal, or could just from all the, I don't know what it's called, but we'll just say radiation coming from the power pack was maybe interfering with it as well too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to address something. TC, we're not charging anything for the checklist. That was a joke. Not $5, not $10. You guys see all the stuff I give away on my videos. I've got PDFs on so many videos to give away so much information to help people. I want to get the information out there. Obviously, I sell stuff too to try to make money, but the checklist will be free. Yeah, Beth, you're right. I was supposed to do the live checklist setup for me. For setting up, and I still haven't made those checklists yet. So everything Mark said is exactly right. And all of that stuff boils down to things don't always work. And there are lots of things that might cause your flash to just not work and not fire when you expect it to fire. Like maybe you didn't realize your transmitter was not turned on, or it was set to receive mode instead of transmit mode, right? These are things that will cause problems. So you always need to be able to be ready to troubleshoot your equipment and get it working if it might not be working for you.
Knowing your equipment and knowing how to get it into certain modes is a big thing. If you just sort of go hog wild and just go out there and hope for the best, that's where you'll end up in trouble, because you're not sure. Oh, I'm in optical mode where it's waiting to see another optical flash to trigger that flash, whereas that's not where you want to be. And so really knowing the insides and outs of at least the main functions of the equipment can make a big difference.
Yes, absolutely. And that's even where checklists can come in handy. You know, even for setting up something like this, which is something that I'll put together for you guys. And hopefully I think by next week, by the next Photo Blab or Studio Blab, we could actually have that checklist ready. Delta Dave says, I hate that my speed lights default to TTL when the camera or trigger goes to sleep. He says, I wish I could make them stay in manual mode. And Delta Dave, I'm curious, which flashes and or triggers are you using? All of the flashes that I have ever used stay in manual mode unless you pull the batteries out to change the batteries. And then when you put new batteries in and turn them back on, they go to TTL mode. Otherwise, all of the flashes I've ever used have always stayed in manual mode when you put them in manual mode. So I'm curious about that. Preparation definitely kills bad luck, Dave. And Beth says, can you make a common troubleshooting list to go with that setup for the common mistakes? Yeah, Beth, we can do that. Absolutely. That's a really good idea. And then Christian says, you should mention slave mode. Some of the triggers are very spendy. Yeah, so this is slave mode, folks. You've got what Mark was talking about as an optical trigger. And I think we've covered this, so I don't want to go too deep into this, but this little panel on the front of the flash, right behind it is a little light sensitive bulb, basically, or light sensitive receiver. And when you put your flash into slave mode, so if you look at the back of this flash here, it says M for manual mode, and then it says S1 and S2, and that's slave 1 and slave 2. And if I put it into slave 1 mode, I'm not sure what slave 2 does, honestly. I think it's just a variation on it. But if you put it into slave 1 mode, this receiver will trigger this flash to fire when this other flash goes off. So if you watch this, I'm going to point this at the camera. So this is going to flash into the camera, but there's nothing attached to this flash. But when I fire this one will go off as well. Maybe. I need to make it actually see. I was covering it up with my hand. Now that I've got this pointed back here, it should go off. Is it going off? I'm going to blind myself, people.
Just for the adventure.
That went off.
Just for the people.
Just do it for the people. So I think it's going off. Yeah, it's going off. Okay, so that's slave mode. And just about every camera has that little optical trigger built in. So if you're using a wireless trigger that just is failing for some reason on your other flashes, but you can get one to go off, then you can still trigger your flashes using this old school method. The key, though, is that this needs to be able to see the light coming from whichever flash is the flash you can trigger.
Yeah, exactly. It has to see it.
Okay,
and when you're saying there's a slave 1 and a slave 2, sometimes some flashes won't work with other flashes because maybe they have a bit of a pre-flash or something. So
yeah,
I think that's kind of how it works.
That's typically a TTL flash because the TTL flash will pre-flash to read the scene and evaluate the exposure. And that pre-flash will trigger your slave flash. And if your slave flash is set at full power or has a slow recycle time, then it won't be able to fire again. If you had it set to like a low power, down at 1/32 or 1/8 or 1/16, you'd probably be able to get it to fire because it'll have enough stored up in the capacitor that it can fire those 2 shots in very quick succession. But you don't want to use TTL, generally speaking, with slave because it's going to limit your ability to work with that slave flash. I'm still seeing that flash in my eyes, guys. Let's see. Matt says, I bought 2 more flash units, so I have a total of 3 Canon 580EX2s. Should I buy translucent umbrellas or reflective ones for doing family portraits? It's basically doesn't matter. I've used translucent ones that you shoot through all the time. I've never used reflective umbrellas just because I didn't buy them. There's nothing wrong with them. Both of them effectively do the same thing. The quality of the light of the reflective umbrella is very slightly different because instead of passing through a white panel, it's reflecting off of a silverish panel. So it's going to be a little bit more like specular, but not a ton. So it's really just a preference as to what type you would like to use. And if you want,
RJ has a good point. He basically says get convertible umbrellas, and you can do either one.
yeah, just get convertibles. Exactly. That's right where I was
Yeah.
going to go. Tim says it's working, but it's funny. Yeah, it's funny that I blinded myself. Delta
Funny for
Dave,
him.
yeah, Delta Dave is using Sony and Sigma flashes, which I should have realized. You've got the Sony Alpha signal symbol as your profile picture there. I should have realized that, but so, I don't like bagging on Sony, but it doesn't surprise me that Sony's flashes do that because they don't always make their stuff super user friendly. Okay. My World says, if I set up 2 slave flashes from one end to the other in a large venue, will it work or is it too far? It should work. It does depend on the flashes, like Dave just said. It will depend on the distance, but it as long as you're not like, hundreds of feet away or something.
They're pretty sensitive.
They're pretty sensitive, so it should probably work.
Yeah, the only thing that you'll find, and I've had this happen before, where I've had one set up at a wedding, is that if somebody's there with their point and shoot camera taking pictures, it'll trigger then as well too, and then might not be ready for you when you're actually needed.
Yes, yeah, that's a very good point. And if this is something that you are going to be doing, before you actually do it like for real, go to the place or a similar place and test it. Like set them up in some sort of a venue that you can get into and start with them, say 30 feet apart and then test it. And then move them 40 feet apart and then test it again. And then 50. And keep going as far as you can go until you either A, run out of room, or B, find the limits of the range for your flashes. And then once you know that, make a note.
Yeah, and the darker it is, the more likely it's going to pick it up. Whereas if you're doing it outside in the middle of the day, your range is really going to be limited.
Right. Yeah, because the sunlight, as an example, is going to diminish the intensity of the light actually coming from the flash hitting the sensor. But if you're in a venue, generally speaking, you're not going to have that problem, because even with all the venue lights on, it's probably not going to be so bright that it's going to impede the ability of the flash to trigger the sensor on the other flash.
Yeah.
Okay.
TC asked if he should take the batteries out of his speed light and other flash stuff if you're not using it. Myself, I don't. If you're using maybe alkaline batteries, maybe you'd want to, just in case they start to leak. But I use rechargeables and never have an issue myself, and I just keep them in there so they're ready to go whenever I need them.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. If I'm not going to be using my stuff for a longer period of time, then I'll take the batteries out, but otherwise I'll leave the batteries in. Although what I've gotten into the habit of doing is actually taking the batteries out every time so I can recharge them. So next time I'm going to shoot, everything's fresh and all my batteries are charged. But if you're not going to recharge your batteries right away, I think you're fine leaving them in, unless, like Mark said, they're actual alkaline batteries that could leak and corrode and damage the gear. Beth says, don't they have a distance limit with the flashes in the manual? They do, Beth, but that's a guideline, and you can sometimes get around that. And that distance isn't going to account for the sensitivity that a receiver might have on another flash. So that's a good guide to use, though, and that's a good idea to bring up, because if you look in there, it's basically the guide number, which is going to be, for a lot of flashes, is something like 30, like a low end flash, quote unquote low end flash, like this TT560 from Newer that I have here. Newer, I'm saying it wrong, but whatever. This has a guide number of 35 meters. That's 105 feet, I think, roughly speaking, 3 feet per meter, 90 plus 15, whatever. It's close enough. 105 feet, right? So that's a pretty good distance. But this is with the flash at full power at full zoom, to hit that distance. So test. That's really the key.
Yeah,
I got a little hair in my mouth. Okay, so let's get to this photo and go through this step-by-step process, because this step-by-step, this checklist process, this is the key. And we've done this before, but we're going to do it again because it's something that you need to drive home. When you are, and this gets to the question that so many other people have had, which is figuring out, like, how do I get the right flash settings? How do I, fix my shadows? How do I get the right flash exposure? How do I make it look natural? How do I do this? How do I do that? And there is no simple answer to that because every single photo you take is going to be a different situation. It's a different scenario, and there's just no one single answer that you can give. But you can use a process that you can walk through every single time that will yield you the results you want by the time you finish the process. And that's what we're going to go over. So we've got this photo of Mark's here. Kim is her name, right? The model?
Yes.
Kim Kiwi,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So we've got this photo here of Kim. And what we see here is a white background with some light. Actually, quiz time. This is quiz time. Okay, I'm flipping this around here so I can look at the chat. And this is what I want to know, guys. I want you, here's how, here. Ooh, okay. We maybe don't have enough time for this. What I was going to say is what we should do is have them direct what I do to get to this point. That would be fun.
Yeah, that would be fun. That would be fun as long as the time is there.
Yeah. All right, so here's what we're going to do. This week, tonight, for the rest of the show, we're going to walk through this process to create this shot. We're going to go step by step, and I'm going to explain each step as I go to try to help you guys understand the thought process behind coming up with the perfect flash photo for whatever scenario you happen to be in, because every situation is going to be different. Next week, what we're going to do is have an assignment photo, which either, I'm not sure if you and I, Mark, will pick it, or maybe we should make them pick it for us too. But we're going to have an assignment photo, and when we come in next week, using the checklist that we'll have available for you guys, you are going to instruct me as to what to do step by step to create the photo. I might give you hints along the way, but I'm essentially going to be your photography dummy doing what you tell me to do. So that you guys, so that you guys can sort of virtually go through the process of working through the photo and creating it. And maybe we'll even use me as the model instead of just my mannequin here. But here's the thing, okay? So the very first thing you need to do, I'm going to turn this off here for a moment. Everything's off. The very first thing you need to do is decide what you're going to do with your ambient light. This is always step one. What are you going to do with your ambient light? Do you want ambient light in the shot, or do you not want ambient light in the shot? And Mark, I want you to confirm this, but I'm gonna say that you did not use any ambient light for this photo.
I don't believe there was any ambient light.
Okay. So we want no ambient light in the photo. That means we need to set our camera settings so that when I take a photo of Mannequin Lisa without any flashes, that the photo is completely dark and black. When we do that, we know that these lights are not adding any light to the photo whatsoever. And that is controlling light number one and getting us one step closer to this vision of the photo that we want. So my settings are currently set at 1/250th of a second and ISO 200 and f7.1. And I don't know how well you can see it, but on the back of my camera, the exposure indicator is flashing -3, which is already telling me that my camera settings are underexposing the ambient light by 3 stops. Now, why did I choose these particular settings? The reason I chose these settings is because I want to use my lowest ISO because I know I'm going to be using flashes, and I know the flashes will have more than enough light to allow me to do what I want to do at my lowest ISO, okay? Number 2, I used an aperture of f7.1 because I want it closed down a little bit to help block this light out. And I also chose ISO 200 to help block this light out. And I also want f7.1 because if we look at that photo of Kim, the depth of field is decent, meaning that it's fairly great, meaning that her face is in focus, her hair is in focus, the rim of the Santa outfit she's wearing in focus, her arms are in focus, everything's basically in focus. So we want some decent depth of field, right? So number 3 is setting my shutter speed, ISO aperture shutter speed. And I want none of this light in the photo. And if I want none of this light in the photo, that means I'm going to use my camera's sync speed. And we talked about what sync speed is before, but just very briefly in a nutshell, your sync speed is the fastest shutter speed that you can use while shooting with a flash. And on my camera and many other cameras, it's 1/250th of a second. And with those settings, I'm going to take this photo. There's no flash happening here. And the photo is going to be, if not entirely, very close to totally black. And let me flip it over so you guys can see it. Where is it? Here we go. There it is. That's the photo I took.
Black.
Yeah, it's black. It's black, which is what we want. It's just totally black, and that's perfect.
Yep.
That is exactly what we're looking for, okay?
Yeah, that's basically the very first thing you do to make sure you're not getting any ambient light into the picture.
Yeah. So TC says, how do those settings not affect your shutter speed? TC, can you clarify what you mean by those settings? Are you talking about my ISO and my aperture, or are you talking about something else? Now, Dave has a suggestion. He says, single light, 45 right, slightly elevated with a minimal kicker or reflector. So we'll break that down as we move through the process. Okay, so shot number 1 is taken care of. The ambient light has been eliminated from the scene. All you see is black. So let's go back to our reference photo now. Now we need to bring a light in. So when you are trying to figure out what you're doing, you need to look at the photo if you have a reference photo. If you don't have a reference photo, the process is slightly different. But because we have a reference photo, we can analyze this and try to figure out where the light's coming from and how to use that light to get the results that we want. Talking a lot. Mark, you wanna analyze? I mean, you know what you did for the lighting, but do you want to like break down how to read the photo and explain to them like what to look for in terms of light and shadow to understand where the light's coming from and the quality of it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So on the picture, we're looking at it. You notice that camera right, that side of her face is brighter. So her left side, camera right, it's brighter. So that basically indicates that your main light is actually on the right-hand side or her left-hand side, depending on how you want to look at it. And then you can also sort of judge the position of it based off the shadow of her nose on her other cheek. And it's pretty close to Rembrandt lighting. And if memory serves me right, I don't think I had the umbrella up that high. I think.
Don't tell us what you did. Just tell us how to read it.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah. So anyway, that's how you tell where to start is with your main light and based off of the brighter side of her face.
Right. So you're looking at where the light is and where the shadows are. And so Mark said the light was coming is brighter on the right side of her face. So that means I'm going to put a light over here to illuminate the right side of her face, okay? And then if you want to figure out what angle to set that light at, how high is it? How low is it? Well, you look at the angle of the shadows on her face. So if you look at the shadow that's being cast by her nose, that shadow on her nose is running pretty much right across her cheekbone, which says to me that the light is coming from pretty much right at the height of her nose. Because if it was up high, then the angle of the shadow would be coming down here along her lower cheek rather than right across her face along her cheekbone. If it was low, the shadow would be shooting up towards her eye. So what you're looking at is where the bright spots are and where the shadows are and how those shadows are being cast by the thing that's causing the shadow. In this case, the nose. So what I'm going to do is turn on the flash now and turn on the power to my Pocket Wizard trigger so that my trigger is actually on and verify that my trigger is still in receive mode so that I know it will work. And this is the part where things get squishy because you're looking at the light on this subject and you say, okay, I need light on her, but how much light? The question is, how much light should I put on her? Well, I don't know how much light until I know how much light I get from any particular setting. If we had an actual handheld light meter, we could do this a little bit more precisely, but I don't use a handheld light meter and I don't have one, and most of you don't, so we're going to do it this way, which is essentially just using the camera meter. So what I'm going to do is take a photo with the flash set at 1/8 power, as is. I'm not going to change anything, and we're just going to see what it looks like and compare it to the photo that we're trying to mimic in terms of the lighting. Sandy says, this is why I think continuous lighting would be better than flash, because you can see what the light is doing when you move it around. Sandy, this is very true. And using a continuous light to see what it does is a good way to understand how the light works. Continuous light is at a disadvantage because then you're mixing your ambient light with whatever continuous actual light source you might be using. And sometimes that makes it difficult to eliminate or control for your ambient light. It's not to say continuous light is bad, it's just a slightly different animal.
Yeah, they each have they each have their advantages and disadvantages. Like Sandy said, you can see right away before you even shoot the picture where the shadows are falling, but typically continuous lights don't have a lot of power, so you end up fighting your ambient light.
Right. Okay, so now this is the photo that I just took. And Mark, I'm gonna have to cover you up for a second here so that we can look at these side by side. So this is the photo that I took compared to the photo of Kim that Mark took. And the clear difference between the two is the quality of the shadows on my model compared to the quality of shadows on Kim that Mark took. The angle, I think, is pretty good. It's not quite perfect because if you look at the shadow that is thrown by the nose of Lisa, the mannequin, it's a very short, sharp shadow. And if you look at the shadow cast by Kim's nose, it's a longer, softer shadow. Okay, the shadow on Lisa just barely comes halfway out, and it leaves that great big white light on her cheek. But Kim's shadow comes all the way across her cheek, almost all the way over into her hair. So that tells me two things. It tells me, number one, that I need to use something to soften my light. An umbrella, which Mark slipped that he used earlier. And number two, I need to change the angle of my light a little bit to cast a longer shadow across Lisa's face. So I'm going to bring you back, Mark, so that people can see you. And what I'm going to do is first just try to work out the angle of the shadow and make it longer by bringing the light to the side more. Because if I come to the side more, that's going to elongate the shadow across her face. Or it should. I'm actually not 100% sure that I'm right here. But I think I'm right. So let's find out.
Yeah.
So we'll take the shot and see what that shadow looks like. Okay. That like totally shadowed the one side of her face. And that's not what we're looking for here. So I probably went too far because the light is hard right now. I'm going to put the umbrella on because using the umbrella will throw some of that light over here as well.
Yeah, wrap around her.
It'll wrap around her, exactly. So I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to add this umbrella. And let's see what the difference is here. And this is exactly the process. It is just take a test shot, see if it looks the way you want it to look. If it doesn't look the way you want it to look, change one thing. If you change more than one thing, then you don't know what you changed. You don't know which of the things that you changed might have made the change you did or did not like. But if you only change one thing at a time, then you can say with definitive, you can say for sure, this is the thing that did or did not work. So for example, I moved the light over here and I took a shot and I know that that did not work because it cast all of this shadow on the side of Lisa's face. I'm going to uncover Mark again here. I need like a bigger monitor or something. So now I'm going to put the umbrella on and see if the umbrella will give me more of the look that I want. That's one thing that I've changed. And it didn't really. So what that tells me is my angle is too strong to the side. And Mark, you know exactly where you position the light. So I'm guessing you're going to concur with me on that?
Yeah, yes.
Now, don't tell me where it is.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly where it was anyways, but I do know, I have a pretty good idea.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to bring the angle back around this way more to let some of this light come over to this side of the face. Wow, it's raining like crazy outside, people. Whew.
Here.
Yeah. Let's see. Lisa needs more hair. The wig that I got with this mannequin looked awful, so I threw it out.
Not as colorful as Kim's hair.
No, not as colorful as Kim's hair. Okay, now that's still not right. Right, because we look at this.
It's always tricky when you're trying to replicate something to get the lighting exactly where you need it. But the way Spyros is doing it here, that's showing basically exactly why you start from, especially if you're trying to replicate a photo, why you start off from just a single light and build your way up.
Yep. Okay, so what I'm going to do, there's still not enough light on the left side of Lisa's face. So what I'm thinking is actually that my initial position was probably pretty good, which was more like over here. But I needed the diffusion to soften and elongate that shadow. Sandy says, wasn't there tornadoes in Wisconsin yesterday? There might have been. I don't know. I do know that I hear hail out there right now. So if I disappear, it's because everything went down. So what I've done is I brought the light back out. I've changed one thing, which is just the position of the light. And I'm going to take another test shot. And this is literally, again, this is all it is. One step at a time, one change at a time. I'm just going to keep driving that point home. One step, one change. One step, one change. Too far forward, maybe more light. Right now, the light is set to 1/8 power. So let's go back. And still not enough light on the side of her face there. So here's what I'm thinking. See, I don't want to bring the light too close, but I feel like the light needs to be closer. And that's just me guessing. I also feel like, God, I feel like the light is more to the right. Here's what I'm thinking, okay? I'm going to bring it closer. Bringing it closer is going to do two things: increase the power of the light and throw more light on the other side of her face. Okay, that's closer. That is significantly closer. So if we look at Kim, let me bring them side by side. I'm going to have to cover you up again, Mark.
No problem.
Okay, so if we look at these side by side.
I know when I'm not wanted.
Stupid snap windows. There we go. Okay, so if we look at these side by side, the right side of Lisa looks pretty good. And the left side needs some light, but the shadow along her nose looks pretty good to me, because the shadow coming off of Lisa's nose is softer now, maybe a little too soft, and running clear across the side of her face. Now, the left side of Lisa is still quite dark. But I'm looking at the photo from Mark, and if you look at the left shoulder of Kim in the photo, you can see a highlight there along the top of her shoulder as well on the Santa suit. And what that tells me is that there's a second light, and I'm guessing it's at camera left, either directly left or maybe a little bit behind to be a bit of a rim light, lighting up Kim from that side. And so what I would say at this point is light one is in position, and I'm happy with the power, which I got lucky being at 1/8 power and just leaving it there. And what I need to do now is just bring in light number 2 and adjust it. And without saying, if I'm, without giving anything away, Mark, am I heading in the right direction?
Yes.
Okay, I'm heading in the right direction. So again, what you're doing is you're analyzing the photo you took. If you're using a reference, you're comparing it to the reference and looking for the clues that will tell you where the other light is coming from to give you the results you're looking for. Yeah, it's getting closer. God, that thunder is going really good. Tornado. Yeah, maybe I'm in the middle of a tornado warning. That's awesome. No, we're not sticking.
Blow away.
This particular shot is not a one light shot, so we are not sticking to a one light shot. But what we can do for next week is just do a one light shot to keep things simple for everybody. So I'm setting up my second light. My light is on. My trigger is on. And now again, I'm just going to start by pointing it at the subject where I think it's coming from, which is not quite right to the side, but a little bit behind is where I think it's coming from. So I'm gonna set it up and shoot it from this angle right here. And I'm going to hit the test button on the flash to see where it hits. I think that's probably a good spot. Just looking at the reference photo to see. And the reason I think it's coming more from the back is if you look at Kim's arm in the photo, just her shoulder is illuminated. The rest of her arm is in darkness. If the light, because Kim's arm is like this, straight down. If this light was right here, all of this is going to catch that light. I want to hit the shoulder, her face, and what would be hair if Lisa had hair, which means I want to be back here a little bit, and I probably want to be up a little bit higher because I don't want as much light to hit this here. So again, I'm going to take a test shot just to watch how the light hits my subject. And I'm actually going to start with that position right there. See, Dr. Dave says reflector camera left for fill. Yeah, so it could be a reflector. I'm actually using another light. I almost never use reflectors, which isn't necessarily a good or a bad thing. But let's see what this looks like. And I didn't change. Okay, this light went to sleep. So let me take another shot. There we go. And let's bring the reference photo back up. Okay, the arm is catching too much light, but the shoulder and the side of her face is catching a nice set of light. Now, keep in mind that this is not going to be exactly the same because Lisa, mannequin Lisa, is not wearing a Santa hat and she doesn't have hair. Kim's hair is going to catch all of the light coming from that rim light and keep it off of her face. Whereas on Lisa, she has no hair, so it's going to hit her face directly. But I would say that other than turning the power down, I don't know if you guys heard that, but it's just a big crack of thunder. I would say other than turning the power down, I'm pretty close. Mark, would you concur, or do I need to adjust further?
Yeah, I think the backlight is a little bit hot, but otherwise, I would agree.
Yeah, I'm going to turn it down 2 stops, and I'm going to take another shot here. Yeah.
That looks better.
That looks much better. Because the light on her arm is dramatically lower because I turned down the power. It's still catching the side of her face, which would be the hair in the Santa hat if my mannequin had hair and a Santa hat on. So I would say this, for me, I would call this and say this is it. This makes me happy. The crack of thunder shook the camera. That's cool. So now I would say, Mark, how close am I to the setup that you actually used to create your shot of Kim?
I think you're definitely pretty close. And to be honest, I don't 100% remember, but my might have had another front flash on the left side at a low power just to help fill in like
The rest of her hair?
her eyes and the opposite side of her nose as well too.
Mm-hmm.
Because looking at your mannequin, it looks darker on her nose. I can't tell though because it's coming through awfully pixelated.
Yeah.
My awesome internet here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see what you're saying. The side of Lisa's nose is definitely a bit darker.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure it was a 3-light setup.
Okay, so if it was a 3
I
light,
don't think I used the reflector. I think it was a 3-light.
if it was a 3 light, then there'd be one more light right here at quite low power, I'm guessing.
Yes.
All right, so let's do it.
TC's been looking at her cleavage.
And her cleavage, right. Let's see. So we just had some severe weather go through a couple hours ago. It looked to be headed your way. Ah, that would explain it, Scott. Scott's from the great state of Illinois, just below us. So they're sending the storm up our way, it seems. So get a trigger on here. And then once we wrap this, it's 7-11. I'm still doing okay for time. I do got to do the dishes, but. So last light. Get this tied down. This on here. And cord cable. Beth, when something is pretty obvious, you got to call it out. True enough. Okay, so this one I'm going to set to its low.
Oh, you disappeared.
Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you now.
Okay, I need to actually get off for a minute.
Nope, you're off now. No, we don't hear you. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but we don't hear you. I don't hear you anyways.
I was on the phone there. My wife was calling. Can you hear me now?
Where you yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. So, yeah, I was still live, but you lost sound for a minute because my wife called. She's getting a ride home, which means I don't have to go pick her up, which gives us a little bit of extra time. Oh, nothing's going on. So this light needs to fill in her face and her cleavage a little bit and the works. So this one I think is probably up and pointing down a little bit at very low power is my guess. So I'm going to do another test shot of this. And what I want it to be hitting is on, I think this one's still in slave mode, which is why it keeps firing on me. There we go. That should stop it. And what I'm looking for when I hit this test button is where is it hitting Lisa? It looks like it's hitting the side of her face where I want now. So it's at its lowest power, and I think I've got it aimed in the right direction. So now let me take another look. And the flashes didn't all go off. Let me make sure everything's turned on and in the right mode.
There you go.
Yeah, that softened it up and lightened it up a little bit. I could probably even go a little bit brighter, but I would say that that's pretty darn close. So I'm going to take it up a stop and take another one. And I know I sound like a broken record, but this is the whole process, folks. There we go. That looks really good.
Yeah.
Again, there are differences because we don't have hair, we don't have the Santa suits, but to me, that lighting looks pretty darn close to what you did, Mark.
Yeah. To be honest, I think seeing as you've got the setup and you're pretty darn close anyways. The main light, I'm quite confident I had it back more, so I was side lighting her more than what you're doing.
So like this?
Yeah, more like that. Just and to be honest, the main reason I did side light her more is, well, she's proud of her breasts, so I was trying to give them a little bit more definition.
Right.
Yeah. So the side lighting helped do that.
So and this is something that's important to understand, though. When you're doing something like this, the goal isn't necessarily for me to come up with the exact same setup that Mark used or the source photo might have used if I'm using a source to try to replicate and learn from, but rather to go through the process until you get to a result that you're happy with. And I would even go a step further to say you don't want to necessarily just be mimicking other photographers' lighting setups. Use that to learn.
Yeah.
But don't just copy, because if you're just copying, then you're not adding any creativity or your own stamp to the photo. You're just copying somebody else's lighting. But this exercise of using a reference photo and going step by step through this process to try to recreate that photo or the lighting that you see in that photo is a great way to help you learn and understand how lighting works. So this is another way to incorporate practice. This is something to incorporate into your practice, is having a reference photo and reading that photo and recreating it.
Right, and also different facial structures will require different lighting, and you might have to play around with it to get what you want. Like in this case, I knew that she wanted to accent her cleavage, so that's why I went with a more side lighting. But if we weren't going for that look, then I probably wouldn't have had the lighting as far back as I did.
And what I was actually going to point that out too, because if you look at the mannequin's face, the mannequin has very high, very sharp cheekbones, and Kim doesn't have the same facial structure.
Yeah,
so the light,
she's got a longer nose and longer face.
Yes. So the light's going to hit them differently, which means you're not going to get the exact same look, because the shadows and the highlights are going to hit different areas because they literally have different structure to their bones and their face and their flesh and everything else. So these are all things to consider when you're thinking about trying to replicate a lighting setup. It's never going to be exactly the same. Don't try to make it exactly the same.
Yes.
Use it as a springboard. Go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
And something else too, like Kim's a younger woman. If you're shooting somebody, like if you're doing maybe family portraits or you're doing like some corporate headshots, and maybe the upper management, they're a little bit older, you might want the lighting more frontal, because then it's going to help hide their age marks, for lack of a better term.
The things that they don't want people to notice in their photos.
Right. And it can save you a lot of work in Photoshop after the fact. Yes.
And Beth makes a good point too. She says different hair colors will affect it. Being blonde, she says, is much harder than being brunette. The bright light will wash out the hair very easily. And that's very, very true. Blonde hair is brighter, so it's going to reflect more light and be brighter in the shot versus a darker or brunette or some other hair.
Yeah, it's absorbing the light.
Yep, exactly. So since we've got a little bit of time, 7:18, let's come up with the photo. Should we do it? Let's see how. Okay, back up. How do you guys want to do this for next week? Do you guys want to pick the photo that we're going to recreate with me as your mannequin, your lighting dummy that you command? Do you guys want to pick the photo, or do you want me and Mark to pick a photo? So in the chat, what do you want to do? Do you want me to pick me or us to pick the photo, or do you guys want to pick the photo?
Either way, we want you guys to drive Spyros mainly on how to get the look.
Yes. You guys will be driving what I do in the recreation process, working through this process to figure out what we do and how to get to that lighting setup. So I know we've got like a 30-second delay, so I'm going to keep talking while we try to get to everybody actually putting in what they want to do into the chat. Beth says, but blondes have much more fun, so it's all good. Beth says, I want to control Spyros. Oh boy. just to let you know, Beth, I'm not going to take my pants off. So Tim says, we should pick the photo. Everybody else, you guys should be chiming in here. We want to know what you want to do. Do you want us to pick the photo, or do you want to pick the photo? Right now, we got one vote for me and Mark. Excuse me. So we just got one vote. Can you do a workshop using a light meter?
If you owned one, you could.
Yeah, I don't own a light meter. Let me see if I can find.
Sandy says she picks.
We pick. Yeah. Okay. Moonlight says we pick.
Thing.
Terry says we pick. Valentine, let me see if I can't figure out a way. Maybe, I mean, what we could do, Mark, is, I mean, if you were willing to do so, you could send it to me to borrow. We could do it, and then I could send it back to you because you've got one.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll try to do that, Valentine. What's that?
Do you know how to use one?
I do. It's been a long time since I've used one, but I do know how to use one. The thing for me about a light meter is that, like, I don't. How do I explain this? Okay, like you look at my photos. Oh, Peter. Sorry, Peter. I said Terry. Terry was the other one. Anyway, like you guys see my photos and you see my work. I work because I've never used a light meter. The way I work is this process that we basically went through, which is I take a photo, I look at the shot, and I like or I don't like what I see, and then I adjust it until I like what I see. I don't often have like the fully realized idea of what I want the lighting to be in my head. And using a light meter, generally speaking, you kind of need to know what you want the lighting setup to be, because you use the light meter to tell you if your lighting exposures are correct in these different positions. Does that make sense? Mark, am I saying that in a way that makes sense? Okay.
Yeah, to an extent, yeah. But like if you're looking for a sort of a basic idea of how a light meter works, the video that I just put up on YouTube, I'm using a light meter in there.
Right.
Basically setting my background, because I wanted to be pure white, I was basically metered to be two stops higher than the subject, me being the subject. I didn't have any pretty girls around, so I had to take a picture of my ugly mug. But
Thank you, Valentine. Thank you very much for that super chat. Okay, so John from Toronto, visiting Victoria, BC to do a 2-week motorcycle course, says hi. I'll be riding back from BC to Toronto, so hope to have some great shots. That'll be awesome, John.
Yeah, that'd be a good trip.
Okay, so Delta Dave suggested that we put up a picture in 6 or 7 lighting scenarios to choose the one we think it is. Oh, that's an interesting challenge too, Delta Dave. I like that idea. I like that idea as well. But here's what we'll do for next week. We're going to have you guys pick the photo, but what we'll do is I think Mark and I should pick like 3 or 4 different photos that you guys can essentially vote on. That way we have an idea
to pick from.
Right, exactly. We don't have like 1,000 pictures that you guys might be submitting or whatever the case may be, because being in the studio, there's going to be limits to what we can do. Not that we can't recreate any particular thing, but essentially for the demonstration at least, it's going to need to be a portrait or a still life photo of some kind of a subject that we're going to try to recreate. And, if we did something like that was just totally fantastically out of the studio, that's not something we could do.
Yeah.
So that's what we'll go with. Beth says as long as I get to control Spyros, and Peter says as long as I get to control Beth. we're gonna have a series of marionettes going here.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, I should uncover you, Mark. I'm sorry, you're still covered up here. I apologize. There we go. Bring you back up. Okay. So I think probably the best place to do that voting would be in the Facebook group, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, so if you are not part of the Facebook group and you want to vote on the photo that we'll be trying to recreate next week, you should join the group. Mark, if you want to grab that link and chuck it in there, that'd be super.
Yeah.
And we'll put the photos up. Mark and I will concur over the next day or so, and we'll get them up right away for you guys to choose from. And what I would like to do too is, I'm thinking, should we do photos that we know the lighting scenario, like some of yours and or mine, or should we do them blind entirely? Because if we do like one of yours or one of mine, then we can at least drop hints into the chat if they need hints and help.
Right.
Whereas if we don't, then we're also sort of having to figure it out as we go.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because then we can prove to them that we can figure it out as we go.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, we'll do that. Yeah, we'll do it totally blind. So not a photo of yours or mine, so that we don't know what the setting is because we didn't make the photo ourselves. All right, so join the group. If you're not part of the group, we're going to do it a blind photo. Mark and I will pick whatever 3 or 4 photos for you guys to vote on. And next week, we'll come out of the gate. You guys will control me. I will be your marionette. And Mark and I will drop hints if you need hints. And Mark will sit back and laugh at us. And that'll be the show. So I hope you guys are excited for that. I think it's going to be fun. It'll certainly be interesting. And one of the other things that we're going to try to do as soon as the weather permits, like I said in the description today, tonight it has been storming out. Yeah, like it's still raining outside right now. But as soon as the weather permits, we're going to take this show on the road. Since I can stream from my phone, we're going to go outside and we're going to talk about balancing flash with sunlight or outdoor ambient light. The process is very similar to what we did here, but it's different because you want some trickier. Of that light.
Yeah.
It is trickier.
That's when I start using flash, and even now using flash outdoors, I have to stop and think more about it than I do if I'm just in the studio.
Yep. Yeah. Peter, we're definitely going to get to outdoor lighting. It's just a matter of the weather letting us get outside.
When there's
so
no
with
tornadoes
that
happening.
Yeah. We want to say thank you very, very much to Delta Dave and to was it Peter who did that last super chat? No, that was Valentine. That was Valentine. Yeah. So very, very much thank you to Valentine and to Peter, or to Delta Dave, for your super chats. We always appreciate the support. Next week we will and then hopefully the week after that we'll take this show on the road and do this outdoors and balance some flash and ambient light outside. So thank you for joining us. We always appreciate it. I'll be live on Friday for a live edit session if you guys want to join for that. And I'll be back with regular videos, and we'll be back next week with the whole regular, all the stuff we do. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Yeah. Night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. All right, now I just got to find the stop button. This is the official end. Good night and goodbye.